But you know what? I heard all about the displaced sugar workers and stuff like that, but I prepared it on paper. So it's my turn to talk. Aloha, everyone. Once upon a time, Ka'u sugar was king, and today our award-winning Ka'u coffees reign. In 1996, our sugar plantation closed after using this aina for more than 100 years. It was our primary source of income. Throughout its legacy, we were dependent on the regular paychecks we received by working 8-hour, 40-hour weeks and sometimes working overtime, performing various jobs mostly in the factory or out in the fields. The company allowed us to hunt and gather throughout these lands, stretching hundreds and hundreds of acres from Makino, above Waiuhinu, to fields like F496 along the highway heading towards the National Park entrance. We know this aina like the back of our hands. We are the ones who worked it for many generations. Our communities were set up as a plantation of workers, facilities, and services. We were comfortable and trusted the company's word. This was a working relationship that worked. Trust is one of the main components necessary in any relationship. But then one day, sugar died. Although we had expected for this closure to happen since the first layoff in 1989, which affected me and my job, I quickly became one of the displaced sugar workers and jumped at the opportunity of going back to school. I was raised by my parents to be positive and to always look for greater things. I understand that I cannot allow my life to pass me by. I make it happen. But for some other people, it was extremely difficult to accept sugar's passing. After my job training, I was fortunate to work for the Hawaii State Employment Service and to assist my fellow community friends and neighbors. Some of them just didn't want to talk about it. They were in denial. Others felt I was being nosy about their situations, even though it was all confidential. Some were willing to relocate after being placed in jobs. A few went back to school, but most of all, the community was broken. Drugs and alcohol became a new friend that led to divorces and bad relationships. The youngsters witnessed a lot of this inappropriateness, and it became them. On the final harvest day, about 1,000 people lined the streets in Pahala. Can you imagine that many people in Pahala? So they lined the streets in Pahala as the semi-tractor trailer with its last load of cane slowly made its way from the top of town to the main part of town, all the way down to the mill yard. There wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. Husbands and fathers no longer could hold back the grief they felt. People came from afar just to witness this historic event. Some of them who once lived here or had family and friends affected by this devastation came to share their condolences. This was indeed the death of a loved one. Like a parent that we had loved and depended on, sugar was no more. This was real, the end of an important era in history, our history. Now what? Understanding the Big Five's idea for filling their labor force by importing immigrants from afar will explain who I am and why it is important you all know our connection from then to now. My dad was 26 years old when he came from the Philippines in 1946. One of the large group of Sakaras, he too came with this idea to work, earn monies, help support the families back there, and one day return. However, he met and fell in love with my mom, a beautiful Hawaiian woman. They got married in Na'alehu and lived in Honu'apo, above the old mill site, where most of the people lived until the town was relocated to Na'alehu in the early 1950s. Perhaps that's why I, at the age of 7, used to wake up early in the morning, quietly sneak out of the house to go adventuring down at the Honu'apo beach, to play in the tide pools and swim in the ponds. Then, climb the coconut trees when I felt hungry, walked over to get some cash from my uncle, who worked in the fire room at the mill. And if he was too busy scooping up wood to keep the fire burning, I would kill some time by sampling the warm brown sugar that periodically fell from the scale into my bare hands. So ono. After Uncle gave me 25 cents, I crossed the main highway to go see Mrs. Eva of Kado's Bar and Restaurant for my usual favorite strawberry syrup shaved ice sprinkled with white sugar. Happily served by Mrs. Eva, my mom's good friend. Then proceeded up Ka'alaiki to climb the bigger trees for more mangoes and guavas, whatever I could find, and to finally make my way back home to share. Of course, I didn't take the easy way. I took the long way home, using the cane truck roads. Everyone in Na'alehu knew me as the Pangalo Dancel girl. My dad couldn't hide this because I wore his face. Too often, I got scolded by the cane truck drivers for pulling on the cane stalks that overhung on the side of these huge trucks as they passed me by. I just wanted to sample, but mostly to see if I could. Dangerous? You go figure. You see, I was a kid with all those ideas. I was never afraid to try. Now back to my dad. Both he and my uncle, who lived with us, had the idea to start a piggery in Na'alehu, above the village, to make sure we always had pork, one of our primary source of foods. To generate some income from the piggery, we oftentimes slaughtered the pig, cut them up into pieces, and sold these cuts to folks in the camps for cheap. They needed to eat too. They provided us with the slop that we cooked together with the squash and papayas that we gathered up above Honu'apo. We topped it off with midlin, and boy, they used to whack 'em. While they ate, I sat on their backs and rubbed their ears. By the way, this idea is now 3 generations and counting. My nephew Dane Shibuya owns Masazo's farm. You'd think we didn't have much, but we had more than other families living on the 4th Avenue in Na'alehu. First of all, we had love. We slept on beds, had parlor furniture, a kerosene stove to cook on, a refrigerator, a washer, and a heater, and never went hungry. At least we could get a new pair of shoes each school year that had to last the entire year. And if it got faded, the heel fell off, or we wore a hole in the bottom, we still wore it. Many of my friends did not have those luxuries. Some of them were used to sleeping on the bare floors, many times with no blankets. But love prevailed. Back in the day, 7 or more kids per family was normal. One family had 24. How do I know this? I played with them, and I knew what they ate. I knew their habits and their lifestyle. But you know what? With all the kids spilling all over the place, there was love. We even had 2 vehicles, one family car and a pickup truck that my mom used for her fish business and for us to go to work at our coffee farms in Papa Homestead in South Kona, where we grew taro on the sloped land. To make sure we always had enough food, we had a huge garden in the back of our house filled with Filipino vegetables and a huge greenhouse my dad built out of bamboo for our flowers. To the right side of our property, we had the chicken coop and a duck pen. I gathered the eggs each day. My goats were tied to a broken down jalopy on the top end, leading to our piggery that was situated up above the town. Here, my grandfather grew the biggest sweet potatoes, so big, it was bigger than his head. Each year, the day before Christmas, I would help my grandpa, Charles Mokuhali'i Grace. We would harvest the sweet potato, and then he would send me off with brown bags, recycled bags, from the plantation store in Na'alehu. And he would send me to go and take these goodies to make personal deliveries to our friends and families in the camp. We shared with our neighbors and the less fortunate in town. It's all about good values and respect for one another, and especially to the Aina that provides us its gifts of aloha. We understand that if you don't give this respect by first opening your heart with a prayer as you ask permission for its gifts in return, you cannot expect otherwise. This is what we know as aloha. Aloha is never for sale. In 1996, we were introduced to Senator Daniel K. Inouye's lay of aloha. He gave us hope to promote the idea of growing coffee in Moa'ula, just as he did Dane Masazo Shibuya with his piggery. This idea came from Francis Marques and Stanley Kweja, 2 of the displaced sugar workers who refused to relocate, go back to school, or to travel to the other side of the island for their daily commute. They both put together their severance pay, whatever cash they could muster, to bid on a D450 dozer that is still operated by Francis Marques as he repairs the roads to make possible passage to the farms for our farmers. Many times, through the kindness of his heart, without compensation monetarily, but always with aloha. I am a product of a Hawaiian mother and a Filipino dad, was one of the last Sakaras who came to work for the sugar plantation in 1946. Growing up in a multicultural town afforded us with different foods and cultures, where words weren't spoken, smiles substituted with a greater result. I was taught by them to be a community servant, and this is the reason my whole family used to volunteer our time and our services to work for the Na'alehu Community Club. It was an annual event. We did this for more than 30 years, all for love. We did not get paid a single cent for that. It was all for love. And this prompted the idea that we could do the Ka'u Coffee Festival and the first Miss Ka'u pageant as well. Because I too did pageants in Na'alehu. I did pageants and I was the special events chairman for the Na'alehu Community Club, as well as for the Na'alehu Filipino Community Club. I held the Little Miss Rizal pageants. It was an annual thing. So for me, giving back to the community is a must. It's aloha. Okay, so we did it all together. It started with talking stories. I'm talking about the coffee festival, people. It started with talking stories with this smart Filipino guy who came from the mainland. You know us guys, when somebody comes from the mainland and they try to fit in with us, we kind of look at that. But this guy was a really nice guy. Of course, sometimes he would want to come talk stories with us when we were busy, but I never shook him away because he had something to share. So he came because he was intrigued by the beauty of our farm, the nostalgic building that was once the scale house at the Ka'u Ag Mill Yard that we have at our farm. Everything excited this guy. He really wanted to be a part of this and started his own farm with the help of others. After a short while, he noticed that farmers were struggling financially, more so because we were growing the coffee, but we didn't know what to do with the coffee after we harvested. So he and I talked stories again. Funny how we talk stories up at the farm to get ideas. Then we talked about putting together a cooperative. So this is how Ka'u Coffee Growers Cooperative came into play. This was Rusty Obra. He was the first president for our co-op. And so he was the guy who talked story with me, but he wasn't the only guy who talked story with me. Because now that we formed this co-op and we knew exactly what we needed, I needed to talk story with somebody else. But that somebody came to me. That was Chris. So he would ask me, what do you think the farmers need? And I told Chris, you know what, you should know better. You come from the mainland. You're always going back and forth. Come on. You go take the coffee and market it for us. Let people know we're here. Lo and behold, he did. So we thank Chris for that, for helping us with the marketing. So as I said, the rest is history. Sugar died. Do not witness Ka'u Coffee dying as well. We have worked too hard for this. Look around you. We instilled pride in this community, and we will continue to do so. With one win, see all of these wins? With one win, or with each and every win, the whole community benefits. We help people get back pride. And we didn't just get it on paper. We had to struggle to do it, as we still do today. So the most important ingredient needed in anyone's life is encouragement. We owe it to the coming generations to do good. If you say we can't, then we'll try harder. It's all about paying attention and growing ideas, for the mind is a terrible thing to waste. Mahalo.